Good morning, class. Our first topic is soil stabilization. Soil is the most essential factor to most of our civil engineering construction works, and several buildings, roads are constructed along the slope, and most of them have been lost due to soil failure, slope failure. So, for avoiding such failures, there are so many methods to improve the stability of the soil, like soil stabilization and soil reinforcement. And what is soil stabilization? The process of improving engineering properties of the weak soil by using various stabilizing agents, and by the reduction in the permeability, compressibility, and the increase in shear strength and confined compression strength, thereby enhancing bearing capacity of the soil, makes soil stabilization more stable. And there are different methods of soil stabilization, like mechanical stabilization, a process of improving property of soil by changing its gradation, include compaction, densification by the application of mechanical energy. Next one is chemical stabilization. Chemicals are used to improve the stability of the soil. Now, next one is geosynthetics. Synthetic products are used to stabilize terrain. Now, why we are using root as reinforcement? We all know that root are strong in tension while soil is strong in compression, and the combined metrics of soil and root result in a reinforced soil. And by using root as the stabilizing agent, there will be less risk in erosion from both water and land movement. And we are using or we are utilizing the plant resources including its root strength to stabilize and reinforce poor strength soil to prevent instability. And root increase the soil shear strength directly by mechanical reinforcing, anchoring the soil layer and forming a binding network within the layer, and indirectly through water removal transpiration. So many materials, synthetic or natural and waste materials, are used for soil stabilization. And we can use many plant having strong root system, and here we are using lemongrass and vetiver for testing soil stabilization. Now, why we are using lemongrass and vetiver for testing? Because the roots of these plants are fibrous and strong. Now, about lemongrass, tall grass with rhizomes and densely tufted fibrous root, highly adaptable to different environment, long-lived and fast-growing. It's a medicinal plant, and root system of a mature lemongrass is known as to be strong and deep. Environmental uses includes amenity, erosion control, and soil conservation. Now, about vetiver, its root contain a fragrant essential oil which is a perfume by itself, and useful in both soil and water conservation due to extensive finely structured fibrous root. It's a good soil binder, and also help to control soil erosion from steep slopes. So we can use the roots of vetiver as a soil stabilizing agent in steep slopes, and these are the two type of vetiver mainly used.
Collection and sample preparation. In order to get an idea about how effective the plant roots are in stabilizing soil, certain tests were carried out. Now we are going to look on collection of plants and preparation of samples for these tests. Both the plants taken for study, that is lemongrass and vetiver, are known for their strong and deep root system. These plants were first grown in a nursery and were transferred to a landslide affected area along with their root balls. After being matured, the plants are collected by carefully removing the subsoil using soil removal tools without affecting the soil surrounding the roots of the plants as if they were transferred from a nursery. The plants are then covered in plastic sheets or plastic containers and transported to the laboratory carefully without affecting the root soil mass, and were watered so as to keep the plant alive. Before being admixed with the soil sample, in order to carry out various tests, the roots were then separated from the grass and the clogged soil. They were washed with distilled water and was kept for 3 to 4 hours. Hand mixing was used to prepare soil matrix to ensure thorough mixing of the roots across the soil matrix. The collected roots were mixed with soil sample in different proportions so that samples with various proportions of the soil root was obtained, and also different density samples were made. Care was taken to achieve uniform mixtures as far as possible. Tests were conducted for these soil samples of different densities and those admixed with different percentage of plant roots. The soil was kept in specially designed soil mold which enabled undisturbed soil testing. Test. The set of tests to be conducted were classified as two: test on soil without reinforcement and test on soil with reinforcement. For the first test, the soil samples from a landslide affected area was collected and packed in watertight plastic bags to prevent the loss of moisture before the determination of its natural moisture content. The collected soil sample was air dried, crushed, and passed through 2.36 mmC for the removal of gravel portion of the soil. The soil sample was thoroughly mixed prior to conducting any test in order to ensure that the sample used was a representative of the bulk. The natural moisture content, specific gravity, particle size distribution, Atterberg limits, compaction characteristics, shear strength, unconfined compressive strength, and permeability of the landslide affected soil were then determined in accordance with Indian standards. For the second set of tests, the samples were prepared as mentioned in the previous slide. The compaction characteristics, shear strength, unconfined compressive strength, and permeability of the soil samples were determined. Unconfined compression test and direct shear strength test were determined for the sample having a density of 1200 kg per meter cube, since this density would provide the lowest soil strength values of the three different densities chosen for the permeability test. Thus, the worst scenario was considered. The permeability test was conducted for three different densities of the sample, that is 1200 kg per meter cube, 1450 kg per meter cube, and 1600 kg per meter cube. The length and diameter of the root was measured using digital vernier caliper. About the results, the UCS, that is, unconfined compressive strength of the soil root mixture increased with increasing root content in the soil, and UCS of the soil with 4% root content almost doubled that of the natural soil sample. Soils usually fail mostly due to shear failure. Therefore, it is necessary to evaluate how the shear strength of the soil sample will be affected by varying proportion of the root system. The shear strength of the soil progressively increased with every increase in root content. The root system improves shear strength of the soil in similar way as fibers do. The shear strength of the soil with 4% root content was significantly improved. This increase in shear strength can be attributed to the tensile strength of the root. Permeability decreased with increase in root content. For the soil samples having densities of 1200 kg per meter cube and 1450 kg per meter cube, the permeability of the root reinforced soil decreases with increasing root content, and this general reduction in the permeability can be attributed to the plugging of void spaces in the soil by the root system. This reduces the pore water pressure in the root reinforced soil. Optimum moisture content is another important parameter concerned with the consolidation and compaction characteristics of soil. It is found that the addition of 2 to 4% of roots by weight in the soil affects the optimum moisture content value and increases it about 10 to 11%. This is a considerable increase in terms of water quantity required to compact the soil, and this is mainly attributed to the larger surface area of the roots, which absorb more water during the mixing and maturation. This also increases weight of the root mass and hence provides more stability and strength to the soil matrix. Conclusion. The results obtained show that the strength properties of the soil samples were improved by the application of root to the soil. Permeability of the soil steadily found to be decreasing with the increasing root content, and this reduction in permeability obviously ends up in more density and also in increased shearing resistance. The study was conducted with varying densities to verify the accuracy of reduction in hydraulic properties, and it was found that the roots also adds up more reduction in permeability other than any densification of soil. Shear resistance and unconfined compressive strength was also found to be increasing with increasing root content. Also, it was found that the roots take up some water added in the soil and thus results in increased OMC values in higher root percentage. The acute problem that may be faced in degradation of the roots is the degradation of roots after a certain period. Concerned with soil root metrics, humus produced due to composite degradation of root soil may add more stability. So, in this study, it was found that addition of roots as a root matrix is a viable solution for increasing both strength and stability characteristics of the soil. The plants are eco-friendly, cost-effective, and with great economic values have an important role on soil stabilization. Planting plants on soils located along slopes is recommended to improve its strength and minimize the ease with which water infiltrates the soil, thereby reducing the incidence of landslide and other water-induced type of slope failure. Many areas prone to landslides can be saved by using this method, which not only increases stability but also increases some of the engineering and index properties of the soil. And also, using plant roots as reinforcement, it may bring up 60% of the plant under that respective area. Since any hydrological mechanism that promote lower pore water pressure in soil are beneficial to slope stability, the reinforcement of soil by vegetation is a highly promising solution with regard to reducing landslide risk and erosion on both natural and man-made slopes. So, thank you.
Our second topic is photovoltaic buildings, that is Building Integrated Photovoltaic System, in short BIPV. They are photovoltaic materials that are used to replace conventional building materials in parts of the building envelope such as roof, skylight or facades. The researches conducted on renewable energy sources has been led to photovoltaic system which uses solar energy to generate electrical power. It can be used as a technical solution to produce electricity by harvesting solar radiation and also integrating solar cell within the envelopes of building. In addition to production of the electrical power, it also offers aesthetical and economical services. The photovoltaic cell may be mounted above or onto the existing or traditional roofing or wall system. That is, they can be placed as an extra structure on the building and also can be used as a building material itself. In the case of photovoltaics that are integrated into the building after construction is completed, they are usually referred to as BAPV, that is Building Applied Photovoltaics. BIPV system replaced the outer building envelope, that is the climate screen, hence serving simultaneously as building envelope material and also as a power generator. Why you should consider replacing conventional building materials with BIPV modules? This question leads us to the advantages regarding the BIPV system. Photovoltaics are the best method for generating electric power by converting energy from the sun into a flow of electrons by the photovoltaic effect. The solar cell produces direct current electricity from the sun, which can be used to power equipment or to recharge battery. As the name suggests, the main principle behind the BIPV system is photovoltaic effect. The term is closely related to photoelectric effect, but there is difference, and the difference lies in where the electron goes to after excitation. In the case of photoelectric effect, the excited electron or the charge carrier is ejected out of the material, usually into vacuum. But in the case of photovoltaic effect, the excited electron or the charge carrier remains within the material itself. However, in both cases, the electric potential or voltage is generated by the separation of charges, and the essential need for the excitation is that the light has to have a sufficient energy to overcome the potential barrier. And the process happens in such a way that when sunlight or other sufficiently energetic light is incident upon the photovoltaic cell, the semiconducting material which it is made of absorbs the energy. In this case, it is silicon, and this absorbed energy excites the electrons present in the valence band, and the electrons jump to the conduction band and becomes free. Actually, there are two layers of silicon used in photovoltaic cells, and each one is specially treated or dropped to create an electric field. That means one side has net positive charge and other side has net negative charge. This electric field causes the free electrons to flow in one direction through the solar cell, generating an electromotive force, thereby producing the electrical current. Thus, a part of light energy absorbed is converted into electrical energy, which will be collected by the metal plates on the sides of each solar cell and will be supplied through the wires throughout the home. By simultaneously serving as building envelope material and power generator, BIPV systems can provide savings in materials and electricity cost. They also reduce use of fossil fuels and emission of ozone depleting gases and add architectural interest to the building. Advantages of BIPV include that the solar photovoltaic energy is a clean energy, and also the energy production is quiet and unobtrusive. That is, they simply make electricity out of sunlight silently with no maintenance, no pollution and no depletion of materials. And also, they helps in lowering the energy bills. The PV solar panels require little maintenance. They can be customized, usually in the case of shape. Other than that, the initial cost that spent on conventional building materials and labor in order to construct parts of the building can be reduced by replacing those parts with BIPV modules. In addition to reducing the initial cost, it also causes additional savings during operation of the building, since it generates electrical energy from the sunlight. Like advantages, there are some disadvantages regarding BIPV systems. The first and main one among them is the higher cost when compared to traditional PV modules. And also, it usually involves more labor cost than usual PV installation, since much care is required while installing these things, and their function get easily affected by the weather, since under cloudy conditions their functioning get restricted. And they are also difficult to incorporate the PV modules to old buildings, that is already existing buildings, than that of a new building. Mainly, there are 4 types of BIPV products. The first one is crystalline silicon solar panels. The second one, amorphous crystalline silicon thin film solar PV modules. And third one, CIGS, that is copper indium gallium selenide based thin film cells, which are flexible modules. And fourth one, double glass solar panels. About the first one, crystalline silicon PV glass modules. Comparing to the amorphous silicon glass, they produces more power per square feet. That is, under same area, the power or energy produced by the crystalline silicon PV glass module is greater than that of the amorphous silicon glass. And hence they are suitable for those buildings and facilities with good solar orientation which seek maximum energy output. They are also the most suitable material to be used on canopy and skylight applications, spandrel glass, solid walls and guardrails. Usually, two types of crystalline silicon solar cells are used. First one is monocrystalline silicon, which are produced by slicing wafers from a high purity single crystal ingot, which in turn is generated from by the recrystallization of hyperpure polysilicon, which are produced by chemical purification processes. And the second one is multicrystalline or polycrystalline silicon, which are produced by sewing a cast block of silicon first into bars and then into wafers. On comparing these two types, it is found that monocrystalline silicon solar cells have higher efficiency than the multicrystalline silicon solar cells. This is because a single aligned crystal of silicon resulting in easier flow for electrons generated through photovoltaic effect in the case of monocrystalline silicon. But in the case of multicrystalline silicon, shards of silicon are aligned in many different directions, which makes electricity flow slightly more difficult. The solar cells made from crystalline silicon are single junction cells. That is, one PN junction is there to direct the flow of electricity created when sunlight hits the semiconducting material. In crystalline silicon photovoltaics, solar cells are generally connected together and then laminated under toughened high transmittance glass to produce reliable weather-resistant photovoltaic modules. The advantages of crystalline silicon PV glass module include: they are easily customized, especially in terms of shape. That is, even trapezoids can be fabricated by using this technology without any difficulty. Second one, greater nominal power capacity per square feet. It is usually considered that crystalline silicon PV glass module produces, under direct sunlight, they produces twice as much energy as that of the amorphous silicon glass installations. That means they take up less area for a given amount of kilowatt power to be reached compared to amorphous silicon glass installations. And also hence the efficiency can go up to 16%. Now coming to the disadvantages. The first one is cost of processing. The method which is used to manufacture the monocrystalline silicon cells needs a lot of energy. The impurity concentration should be as low as 10⁻⁻10%, and hence a great control and balance of the single crystal silicon is required to generate an ingot that has monocrystalline silicon all throughout. That is, to make it highly uniform, a lot of processing is required. Other than this, the oxidation of the ingot may also occur by the combination of oxygen with silicon or the doped materials. This combined oxygen will hinder the flow of electrons or charge carriers, which make the processing or the procedure much complicated, thereby increasing the cost. The second disadvantage is the loss of material. The single crystal silicon is needed to sliced into wafers of thickness 200 to 300 micrometer, and for this purpose an inner diameter saw is used, which employs diamond particles on its blade. It is usually difficult to employ any kind of saw mechanism because at the desired thickness level of the wafers they tend to break easily. And also about 50% of the produced silicon get lost as sawdust during sawing process. The third disadvantage is problems regarding the absorption. Generally, the structure of solar panel includes a glass on top for protection from wind and the photovoltaic cell with anti-reflective coating in the middle with a metal to support at the bottom. These three layers has different refractive index. The absorption factor of the solar cell is given by the equation alpha equal to 4 pi k by lambda. According to this equation, the wavelength is inversely proportional to the absorption factor. That means, as the wavelength of photon increases, the absorption factor decreases. Thus, we can say that the long wavelength photons are hardly absorbed, and hence the light with higher wavelength is not actually utilized by the solar cell. These are the disadvantages regarding the crystalline silicon photovoltaic modules. This much is about the first type of BIPV product.
The next type of BIPV system is amorphous crystalline silicon thin film solar PV modules. Like conventional solar panels, amorphous solar panels are made from silicon, but they are constructed in a different way. Instead of being constructed from solid silicon wafer like mono or polycrystalline silicon panels, amorphous panels are made by depositing non-crystalline silicon on a substrate like glass, plastic or metal. Amorphous silicon is the non-crystalline form of silicon used for solar cells and thin film transistors in LCDs. It can be used as semiconductor material for a silicon solar cell. Advantages of amorphous solar panels. Unlike many other thin film panel options, amorphous silicon panels use way less toxic material. So this is environmentally friendly. Apart from that, amorphous solar panels are also bendable and produce only less cracks. Disadvantages. The ongoing challenge with amorphous solar panel is their lower efficiency. It lost its significance due to strong competition from conventional crystalline silicon cells and other thin film technologies. It's also affected by the increasing content of carbon in the alloy due to the increased disorder in the atomic network. Properties. Regarding the properties of amorphous silicon, it is calculated that the density of amorphous silicon is less when compared to crystalline silicon under same temperature condition, that is at 300 Kelvin. The density of amorphous silicon has been calculated as 4.90 into 10 raised to 22 atom per centimeter cube at 300 Kelvin. This density is 1.8 plus 0.1% less when compared to crystalline silicon. The next type is CIGS based thin film cells. CIGS solar cells are made from a compound called copper gallium indium diselenide sandwiched between conductive layers. This material can be deposited on substrates such as glass, plastic, steel and aluminium, and when deposited on a flexible backing, the layers are thin enough to allow full panel flexibility. It's a tetrahedrally bonded semiconductor with chalcopyrite crystal structure. Advantages. Unlike most thin film solar technologies, CIGS solar panel offer a potentially competitive efficiency to traditional silicon panels. Apart from that, it has a high absorption coefficient, so it can strongly absorb sunlight. CIGS has an exceptionally high absorption coefficient of more than 105 per centimeter for 1.5 electron volt and higher energy photons. CIGS layers are thin enough to be flexible, allowing them to be deposited on flexible substrates. Disadvantages. The primary disadvantage of CIGS panel is their price. The manufacturing cost of CIGS panels are very much high. Apart from that, CIGS panels are not as efficient when compared to crystalline solar panels. It may take several more years to solve the manufacturing problems and bring the production cost in line with the other leading producers of solar panels. The next type of BIPV system is double glass solar panels with square cells inside. These are framed solar modules with advanced PERC technology. This is an innovative product which uses solar cell layers laminated between 2.5 millimeter heat strengthened glass. It allows more sunlight to pass through, tailoring them for applications such as carports, shopping malls, or greenhouse. Double glass PV panel is actually a new type of BIPV that also provide clean and sustainable energy. Advantages. This double glass design enables lower degradation rate and higher annual and lifetime energy production. Apart from that, the panel can withstand high humidity, high temperature, sandstorms, ultraviolet and corrosion. It has long lifetime, which is about more than 30 years. Greater and quicker energy savings and fast ROI. These are the advantages. Disadvantages of double glass solar panels. Efficiency is low compared to other renewable resources of energy. Since the energy from sun is unpredictable, the power generated gets reduced during cloudy weather. Apart from that, in case of double glass solar panels, long range transmission is inefficient. The PV panels are fragile and can be damaged relatively easily.
Our third topic is amphibious building. It is introduced as a highly innovative approach to tackle extreme flooding. It basically targets the concept of flood-resistant houses in lowland areas and works on the principle of buoyancy. Amphibious building can be defined as a sustainable flood mitigation strategy that allows an ordinary structure to float on the surface of rising floodwater rather than getting immersed or being affected by it. The term amphibious is an adjective which means something that can live on land as well as water. This word was derived from modern Latin word amphibium and Greek word amphibian, which transformed as amphibious over the course of time. Materials which are lightweight and also having considerable strength is used for the construction of these type of structures. As you can see in the slide, the lightweight structure is raised in the basin supported by the force of water floating and then protecting the contents and equipments during the time of flood and the rise of water level. It brings together standard components from the construction and marine industries to create an intelligent solution to flooding, that is, integrating the knowledge of construction techniques with those of shipyards, thus securing the building in the event of flooding. It is actually a building that rests on the ground, but whenever a flood occurs, the entire building rises up in its top, where it floats, buoyed by the flood water. And the secret of this purpose is hidden in its foundations, which will be discussed later. And the floating base is almost invisible from the ground. The drafting purpose of the house is based on Archimedes' principle, which states that the upward buoyant force that is exerted on a body immersed in a fluid, whether fully or partially submerged, is equal to the weight of the liquid that the body displaces. The mass and volume of the house should be less than that of water, and it is this which determines its buoyancy. Why amphibious buildings? As we know, the floods are natural disasters which cannot be controlled. Due to increased population, human beings started reaching out more and more area for the need of shelter, which involved acts like reducing catchment area of rivers and using it to construct more houses. Thus, the natural flow of water gets restricted. Other than that, the deforestation causes global warming, which somehow results into natural disasters. Due to Arctic melting, the melting glaciers adds more water to Earth's oceans. As these ice sheets and glaciers melt, the water eventually runs into the oceans, causing sea level to rise. Because of these reasons, the sea level is said to have risen by 20 centimeters in the last century and is expected to rise by 3 times that amount in the 21st century. Therefore, floating houses will not just be a fashionable lifestyle but a necessity. The amphibious building enables the life in flood-prone areas much secure and safe during floods, since it works in synchrony with the flood-prone region's natural cycles of flooding rather than attempting to obstruct them.
Amphibious house with buoyant foundation. A buoyant foundation allows the house to sit just above the ground under normal condition, but when there is flood, it allows the entire system to rise up and float safely on the water surface. The system consists of different basic elements like buoyancy blocks, vertical guideposts, structural subframe, and concrete pit. The structural subframe attaches to the underside of the house and supports the flotation elements. The vertical guideposts, which sunk into the ground near the corner of the house, prevent the house from going anywhere except straight up and down on the top of the water. It also contains a concrete pit where the foundation rests when there is no flood. It also contains utility lines having self-sealing connections. The extension of the structural subframe attached to the top of vertical guidance poles near the corner of the house that telescope out of the ground to provide resistance to lateral forces from wind and flowing water. When flood occurs, the flotation blocks lift the house along with the structural subframe, transferring the force between the house blocks and the poles. The slide shows the cross-section of an amphibious house. Floating systems. There are different types of floating systems, which includes log floats, solid styrofoam encased in rubber, foam-filled steel pontoons, concrete and foam, wood and foam, polyethylene shell with solid core polystyrene block molded inside, and fiberglass, etc. The important factor to be considered in case of floating system is that the base of the structure should help in floating as well as should be able to take the dead load, live load, and other loads to be encountered by the house. The houses can also be constructed on boards, hollow pipes, lightweight parts, and similar materials, which helps in floating as well as in taking up loads. Features of floating foundation. The foundation must be unsinkable, rigid, and durable. Since most of the materials are recyclable, it is environmentally safe, as well as bug and rodent proof and insurable.
Different materials are used to construct amphibious houses such as concrete patons, lightweight concrete and air can, etc. Now, concrete patons. What are patons? They are hollow watertight vessels that can support a weight equivalent to the amount of water they displace. Though patons are made up of heavy materials and concrete patons are completely insinkable and high buoyancy. The construction consists of reinforced concrete with a core of cellular plastic, making it unsinkable and giving it a long span. And the advantages include short construction and environmental friendly. And all piers are prepared for electrical wiring and plumbing, and they are coupled by wire or rubber. Lightweight concrete using styrofoam. Main ingredient for the foundation is EPS, that is expanded polystyrene or styrofoam encased in fiberglass reinforced concrete. EPS act as a buoyancy block allowing the vertical movement of the house, that is amphibious house, and also consists of variety of closed-celled structure, consists of 98% of water, which increases the buoyancy. Construction begin with a work floor consisting of EPS sheet glued together on the surface. And EPS is made up of styrofoam balls as lightweight concrete instead of using crushed stones, and also have increased insulation properties. Air can or steel patons used for floating beams. Now, it is a cost-effective and also economic-friendly material, and it is the first material used for the foundation of amphibious house in Kerala.
So, the advantages. Amphibious buildings are environment friendly, They are cost effective, easy to construct, and are durable. These buildings have suitable mooring and movement systems that keep the house from going anywhere except straight up and down on top of the water. The major advantage of these buildings is that the residents can stay in home during flood. They don't have to worry about their place being destroyed or move into relief camps. They will be safe inside their own home. Buoyant Foundation project have proved it can withstand extreme flooding by fitting the EPS block to the existing house. These EPS blocks are of low density, but it gives very high strength. It will not break down, so it will not spread into the surrounding soil. It can be installed by hand using simple tools, so this eliminates the investment and operation cost of heavy machinery. Using of low-cost material and locally available materials can improve the efficiency and vernacular character of the place. Now, the limitations. One of the main limitations of these houses is that their height is restricted to the mooring post height. So if flood occurs at a height greater than the height of mooring poles, then there is a chance that the house may also flood. This height also places a restriction on the number of stories that can be built. After the flood, it is quite difficult to clean up the pit in which the buoyant system is stored, and debris that gets in the pit cannot be removed without jacking the house up during normal operations. And also, excavating this pit becomes more difficult and expensive if there is bedrock near the ground surface. And since room has to be made for the pit and buoyant system, below grade spaces like crawl space or basement may be lost. The building's utilities must be waterproofed and flexible connections must be installed so that they won't be damaged during flood. If the construction is done during geoform, then care should be taken that they are treated to resist insect infestation, since insects like ants can burrow into the geoform and weaken the material, which makes it unable to support any load. Untreated geoform is easily affected by fire. If the geoform comes in contact with a petroleum solvent, it will immediately turn into glue-type substances, making it unable to support any load. Conclusion. So we can conclude that amphibious buildings are low-cost, low-impact flood protection strategy that gives a community enhanced flood resilience and improves its ability to recover from a disaster. The use of buoyant foundations is an approach to flood mitigation that disperses risk rather than concentrating it. When flooding occurs, these buildings rises with the water levels to remain safely above the water and then settle back as the water recedes. They can be implemented as both new construction and retrofitting method that could benefit the communities at high risk of chronic flooding. Precast concrete pontoons filled by expanded polystyrene blocks are one of the approaches towards economic and time-saving strategy. Thus, by making amphibious houses instead of the ordinary houses, we can overcome the flooding issues faced by the people in low-lying areas, since they can reduce damage to property and human life significantly. It is a novel and simple solution to treat the flood rather than fighting with it. So, why fight flood water when you can float in it? Thank you.